Wagwan, brethren. Alright, my patois is horrible. I'll admit it. It's your boy TonyMasseyCooks, and I'll tell you what is authentic. And that is these delicious Jamaican beef patties. Yes, Jamaican beef patties, and they were made right here in my kitchen. When I say made in my kitchen, I mean everything was made in my kitchen, including this buttery, flaky, delicious pastry. So I'm going to show you exactly how I did this. So all you got to do is hang out, grab yourself a beer, and get ready for this. This one is going to take you right back to Jamaica if you've ever been. You're going to love this one. So I'll see you next time. I'll see you next time. Let's get started with these Jamaican beef patties. The first thing we have to do is make the pie crust. So let's go ahead and assemble all of our ingredients for the pie crust, for the crust that's gonna go around that delicious beef patty. Let's get it done. All right, so let's go ahead and get started making this pastry for the beef patties. Now, the key to making a very flaky, very buttery pastry is everything needs to be cold, okay? So I'm gonna be using my KitchenAid mixer to mix everything. And as you can see, I put my bowl in the freezer. And I'm gonna be using the blade attachment. The colder the better. Because what we're trying to essentially do is we're trying to mix everything and get the flour and the butter, and we don't want the butter to melt because we want that to happen while it's in the oven, and that's gonna create these little air pockets, which is going to result in something very flaky and very delicious. So let's get all our dry ingredients first. First things first, we're gonna need about 4 cups of flour. Flour goes into there. And then we're gonna need about 2 teaspoons of sugar. Now this is a savory dish, but you do want a little bit of that sweetness going on with your pastry. Now, it's not authentic Jamaican beef patties if it's not yellow, and the way we're going to make that happen is with the turmeric powder. So we're going to put 2 tablespoons of turmeric powder in there. We're going to put 1 teaspoon of baking powder, not soda, powder. And then to add flavor to the pastry, because I don't want to just bite into the pastry just to get to the meat inside of the beef patty. I want the flavor to happen on the outside of the beef patty too. I'm gonna add 1 crushed beef bouillon cube. Get that open and in there. Perfect. All right. Now I'm just going to move my chopping block a little bit to the side. And we're going to just mix these dry ingredients together and get them nice and mixed up inside the KitchenAid, my trusty KitchenAid mixer. I love this thing. This is probably one of the best kitchen appliances I have. It's probably one that I use the most often for most of the meals that I make. That and probably my air fryer. So, all right. So once we get that nice and mixed together, what I have here is 2/3 a cup of butter. But as you can see, the butter is chopped into little cubes, and in anticipation for this recipe, I had it sitting inside of the freezer. So this butter is ice cold, all right? I'm gonna throw this into that mixture. And again, what I'm trying to do is mix this butter in with the flour. Now I'm mixing that butter in with the flour, and what I'm trying to do is create almost a sand consistency, almost like sand. And that's gonna take a few minutes here. So let that mix up. Letting it my KitchenAid mixer is really doing all the work for me right now. Now, as my butter is mixing in, the other thing that I want to add in is some pink salt. So I'm going to add in about a teaspoon, maybe 2. The next thing that's going in is some ice cold lard. And again, I want everything really cold. And again, this is just gonna add that fat, which is gonna add the flavor, which is gonna also make it nice and crisp, not nice and flaky. So let that do its thing. It's looking really good. Turn this down a little bit. And I'm adding about another 2/3 cup of lard into that mixture, and I can see it's already breaking down and getting that sand consistency that I'm really looking for. It's looking really good. All right, so this looks like it's doing its thing. Let me check on it. Yeah, that's what I want. See, I got that nice, let me take it out of here. That nice sandy consistency. That's exactly what I'm looking for, right? I'm actually gonna just add a little more turmeric to here. I'm not happy with the color. I'm really looking for that yellow color. So I'm just gonna add a little more. So I'm just gonna add a little more turmeric powder so I can really get that yellow color that I'm looking for with my beef patty. Let me get that mixed in really well. That's what I'm looking for. Okay. Now, the next thing I'm gonna do, for this you can add water, but I'm gonna add ice cold buttermilk. Again, capitalizing on that fat, trying to get that crust, that pastry crust really flaky, and fat is your friend when it comes to baking, I'm telling you. So I'm just gonna add a little bit at a time. I don't want this to be a wet mixture. It needs to stay dry for the most part until I'm ready to ball it up into a dough. So just a little bit at a time. I have about 6 ounces of buttermilk here. I'll probably use 4, depending on how this works out. So I can see it's starting to clump up really good. That's what I'm looking for. Yep. That blade is really helping out here. Normally you have people do this with a fork or a knife, and it's really difficult to do it. I say use that KitchenAid. If you got the appliance, use it. All right, my dough ball is starting to form, which is great. So I'm gonna go ahead and shut this down. And that's what I want. See that just ball of dough? That is perfect. Now, this is not ready yet. It's got one more step it needs to take, and that's for it to rest. So I got my ball of dough here, and it literally looks like Play-Doh, right? That's what I really want. That's almost a Play-Doh consistency, kind of like Play-Doh. That's exactly what I'm looking for. That's perfect. Now, what I'm gonna do with this is I'm gonna drop it in a bowl, and then I'm gonna cover it with some saran wrap. And I'm gonna put this in the refrigerator for 30 minutes and let this rest, okay? For 30 minutes, let this rest, and then we'll be ready to use it. By the time we get done preparing the meat filling for our beef patties, this will be ready to go. So, all right, now that we have the outside ready to go, it's time to prepare what's gonna go inside the beef patties. Let's do that right now. All right, first thing we're gonna do is chop up our vegetables. We have some carrots, we have some green onions, we have some white onion, some garlic, and some ginger, and then I got some thyme, and the superstar of the bunch is this little guy right here, the Scotch bonnet pepper. That's gonna go in as well. So to really get a mixture of these flavors, I'm gonna do just a really rough chop on my vegetables, and then I'm gonna throw them all inside of my food processor, get them all mixed together, and then put them into my cast iron skillet. So let's chop these vegetables up and get them ready for the food processor. Start with our carrots. So all these veggies are gonna go into my food processor here. And then of course I'm gonna add I got about 6 to 8 cloves of garlic here. I'm gonna throw those right in there as well. Gonna go ahead and get this chopped up and ready for the skillet. All right, so I got my veggies all chopped up really well. That smell is absolutely amazing. And I just did some pulses. I don't want it to be so small that it's almost like a paste. Just getting them nice and chopped, so you can see here they're ready for the skillet. All right, let's go ahead and start sauteing these veggies. Sauteing our veggies, we're gonna start off with about 2 tablespoons of olive oil. We don't need too much. And our veggies are gonna go right in there. This bad boy heats up really fast, so I'm not worried about it not being hot enough yet. Get all those vegetables in there. That looks absolutely incredible. Yeah. Okay, and I just want to get these nice and sauteed. I wish you could smell my kitchen right now because it smells absolutely amazing. And these veggies smell absolutely amazing right now. All right, my veggies are sauteed. So now I'm gonna go ahead and throw in that meat right there in the center. I'm gonna start with some salt. I'm using probably about 2 tablespoons of salt. Some fresh ground pepper. That is a staple for any meal. Please use salt and pepper. Next, to really give this the Jamaican flavor that it's supposed to have, we're gonna add in a little sweet paprika. This is Spanish sweet paprika. That's about 2 tablespoons. And in goes a little curry powder. It's about a teaspoon of curry powder. Oh, that smells good. And then we have about 2 teaspoons of allspice. Perfect. Now, some people use Worcestershire sauce in their mixture. I like to use this seasoning called Magi seasoning. I see this a lot when I travel overseas. It has a different flavor than Worcestershire, but I think it has a pretty unique and pretty delicious flavor. Add some of that in there. Oh God, this smells incredible. I'm telling you. You have to try this recipe. A lot of people are intimidated by baking their own pastries and making their own street foods, especially because when you start making foods that are steeped in tradition, you know, it can get a little, you know, it can get a little scary, because if you don't do it exactly right and you happen to have somebody who's going to be tasting this and they're from Jamaica or they're from New York or somewhere like that, and they grew up eating beef patties and it doesn't taste like their moms, or it doesn't taste like, you know, their grandmothers or whatever the case may be, then all of a sudden you get all this criticism. So it can be good, but just not authentic, right? But I think this is pretty authentic. I think this is pretty authentic. I used to live down the street from me, was a kid I grew up with. His name was Fitzroy. Fitzroy had like 6 sisters. And I remember asking Fitzroy why he had so many sisters, and maybe not just 6, maybe 4 or 5. It was a lot of sisters. And he told me that his dad had made it clear that he wanted a son, and he was going to keep trying until he had one. Well, Fitzroy is Jamaican. I'm not sure exactly what part of Jamaica they're from, but I remember going to their house and his mom would have the most delicious beef patties. I mean, and it's like she had them by the truckload. She always had beef patties ready to go. So when we go over there and have dinner at his house or just hang out at his house, back when I used to play video games, his mom would come into the room with a plate for these golden brown, just absolutely incredible beef patties. They had just the most amazing flavor in them, and you could smell them cooking in the kitchen, and it smelled a lot like what I'm smelling right now, if I do say so myself. Now, if you haven't done so already, we're going to be baking these beef patties at 350 in the oven. So if you haven't already, now is a good time to go ahead and preheat your oven to 350 degrees. All right, it's been about 30 minutes, so our pastry is ready to go. So we're gonna dump it right here on our board here. And I don't know if you can see it or not, but you can see the little pieces of butter just kind of shining through. So I'm gonna work this pastry a little bit. First things first, let's put down a little flour so nothing sticks. I'm also gonna flour my rolling pan as well. So I don't wanna work this too much because I don't want to release the gluten in here, but I do want to get a nice little ball going. So I'm gonna go ahead and cut this in half, and then cut it in half again. And I'll just start with this part right here. More flour. Now, I got my ice cold butter here, and I'm going to just shave off some pieces of butter. And I'll show you what I'm going to do with this. Again, the butter is what's going to really create that flavor, first the buttery flavor, but also, more importantly, the flakiness. Okay? So I got 4 little thin pieces of butter here, and I'm just going to fold this over, just like so. Fold it in half. Now watch this. I'm just going to roll it out. So I want a nice sized beef patty. So I'm actually going to use this bowl that is holding my flour and transfer that over. I'm gonna use this bowl to cut my circle. Just like so. Perfect size. Perfect size to stuff with my beef, fold it over. Perfect size. So I'm gonna make a few of these using that same technique. About 8 of these little pastry rounds, and I'm ready to go ahead and start stuffing them and get them into the oven. But first, I'm gonna give them a bit of an egg wash. This is going to help with the baking process. Also give it a nice shine. Now, usually people use egg whites only. I think that's a waste, so I'm actually gonna use the whole egg. I'm using 2 eggs here, and with a fork I'm just gonna whisk those together. Perfect. Now I'm gonna start adding my beef into the beef patties. Now, I don't want it to be too, I'm not gonna try to overfill these, okay? Just enough so that I can fold them up. So probably with these size, I'm going to go about a teaspoon here, or excuse me, a tablespoon rather. Now, what I'm gonna do to close these is I'm just gonna use some of my egg wash and put it on the edge of the pastry, and then I'm just gonna fold it over and press down, just like so. I put a little too much in there. Just like so. Now I'm gonna give them another egg wash all over. Right, and these are gonna go on my baking stone into the oven for about 25 minutes. Again, into the oven, 25 minutes, baked at 350 degrees. Into the oven, 25 minutes, baked at 350 degrees. Send them in there.